Thank you all for coming today. I'm presenting this paper. Very much thankful to be doing this paper for Eric Dietz and Eric Klingelhofer on searching for Roanoac, the archaeology at the Elizabethan Gardens. So in 1582, Walter Raleigh sent two small ships under Captain Amadas and Barlow to discover what lay west of the narrow sandbanks that jut out the mid-Atlantic coastline. They came ashore claiming the unexplored country for Queen Elizabeth and were soon met by leaders of the indigenous people, exchanging gifts of food and clothing on the beach. Soon the English ventured westward into the Sound. They reported, quote, "We came to an island which they call Roanoac, and at the north end thereof was a village of 9 houses built of cedar and fortified round about with sharp trees to keep out their enemies. When we came towards it, standing near unto the waterside, the wife of Grano, the king's brother, came running out to meet us very cheerfully and friendly. Some of her people she commanded to draw our boats onto the shore. Others she appointed to carry us on their backs to dry ground, and others to bring our oars into the house for fear of stealing. The English were warmed by a fire, their clothes dried, and they were fed a variety of foods and drinks, including water infused with sassafras, also known as root beer. We were entertained with all love and kindness, and with as much bounty after their manner as they could possibly devise. We found the people most gentle, loving, and faithful, void of all guile and treason, and such as lived after the manner of the Golden Age." End of quote. This notable moment of hospitality, where Englishmen first entered the home of an Algonquian noblewoman and were treated with such respect and kindness, is the true first contact between the cultures. But where was it? Roanoac has long been associated with mysteries, but the site of the first contact and all the history that followed, for better or for worse, remains lost in the sands of time, or perhaps under the sand dunes of Roanoac Island. This paper outlines clues to locating Lady Grangno's village of Roanoac. It's already happened, though. There you go. All right. Excavations at Fort Raleigh by the National Park Service archaeologist Gene C. Harrington began in 1947 and continued with interruptions until 1965. In 1953, he examined the tract of land owned by the Roanoac Island Historical Associations. Since 1953, the Garden Club in North Carolina's Elizabethan Gardens. Harrington's few trenches unearthed few artifacts. An important exception, however, was a nearly complete dark gray Collington ware pot, shell-tempered and fabric impressed with a pointed base. Likely from the 1500s, this vessel lacked its upper portion, presumably removed by more recent plowing, because it was found sitting vertically 1 foot below ground surface in the taproot mold of a burned-out tree. The relative lack of other finds suggests that the local workmen who dug these trenches were just unobservant of these layers. At Fort Raleigh, later excavations recovered a large number of artifacts from Harrington's backfilled trenches, indicating that much was also missed at the gardens in 1953. William Hague of Louisiana State University studied the coastal prehistoric archaeology of North Carolina in 1954 and 1955. Hague identified the locality of Fort Raleigh and adjacent RAHA properties as an Indian site that lacked a known settlement, reporting that, quote, nothing was found that suggested a concentrated village, midden, or garbage dump, end of quote. In addition to items unearthed in Harrington's test excavations in the gardens, Hague noted that workmen later found part of an Indian clay tobacco pipe in a soil layer buried 6 feet beneath a sand dune. Harrington's trenches had not reached that depth. Hague's collection of artifacts from the garden was later reviewed by David Phelps of East Carolina University, who ascribed the pottery to the latest native culture at Roanoac, the late woodland period Collington ware. Phelps noted that Hague retrieved from the sunken gardens 10 plain, 79 fabric impressed, 6 simple stamped, and 60 residual Collington sherds. As the sunken garden alone yielded 155 late woodland sherds, plus 42 sherds of earlier types, then the entire garden had more Algonquian archaeology than had been discovered at Fort Raleigh itself. 10 years after Hague's report in 1995, the Coastland Times reported that, quote, an East Carolina University archaeology class led by David Phelps uncovered pieces of Indian pottery, animal bone, and shell at the southern point of the Elizabethan Gardens property, indicating what Phelps believed to be an Indian refuse pit. The site was being prepared to have a warehouse built upon it for the Elizabethan Gardens by the Roanoke Island Historical Association. Phelps said the site had been disturbed by the Elizabethan Gardens' use of the area for storage, but that the class dug trenches which allowed depth control when trying to get the undisturbed zone of earth. The broken bits of pottery, birds, and animal bone and shell represent food remains led Phelps to conclude that the site was used as an outlying refuse pit for an Indian village. Phelps said he had always believed an Indian village was located at Doe's Point because of finds along the beach there. He was at first surprised to find Indian artifacts at the southern end of the Elizabethan Gardens, quoting, I don't know why it's here, he said. If we do find more here, it may turn out to be an outlying village, end of quote. So this news report is important because it reveals who has not entered the literature on Raleigh's colonies, the amount of material recovered in 1995, its identification as an Algonquian midden or kitchen dump, and the archaeologist's fixed idea of the location of the Roanoke village. Phelps described the site as a midden, which was typically close to the edge of a settlement, but he was eager to look for the village at Doe's Point, where indeed National Park Service archaeologist Harrington had located some burials washing out into the Sound. Phelps' class records identify the pottery they found in the gardens as solely late woodland Collington ware, along with the food refuse mentioned in this article. Phelps and others have found much less evidence of an Indian presence on the eastern portion of the gardens, including the site of Odom Hall Conference Center, which suggests that its archaeological potential lies to the west. This observation appears to have corroborated by 2018 fieldwork by North Carolina Office of State Archaeology, just east of the Phelps dig, testing in advance of the Butterfly House construction, located no Aboriginal artifacts. In October 2012, a First Colony Foundation archaeological project supervised by Eric Dietz of the University of North Carolina examined the bluff at the western end of the property fence. Under the remains of the sand dune, receding from the shore, test pits revealed an old topsoil layer containing sherds of late woodland Collington ware. The southernmost test pit, placed close to the fence's access gate, exposed not only sherds, but kitchen debris of ash, shell, animal bone fragments, and the edge of a feature cut into the soil, perhaps a pit. First Colony Foundation prehistoric expert Clay Swindell concluded that this area has been on the edge of an Algonquian settlement. Ten years later, in February 2022, First Colony Foundation had the opportunity to return to Elizabethan Gardens to resume its survey of the property's western edge. Archaeologist Eric Dietz and myself carried out the field work, which consisted of two 200-foot lines of shovel test holes 20 feet apart from each other. The western line yielded no artifacts, which suggested that any settlement there did not spread into the National Park tract. Two test holes on the eastern line, however, produced native pottery. Both were dated to the Middle Woodland period, long before Elizabethan first contact. They did, however, match the 1955 recovery of Middle Woodland pottery at the sunken garden. This locality therefore, had for centuries attracted prehistoric settlement, which overlooked the sound and must have had a source of fresh water. Since the 1800s, the shoreline has receded more than 100 yards, with numerous native artifacts found in the water and beach. It must be watched carefully for archaeological artifacts and features being destroyed by coastal erosion. So in conclusion, the fieldwork of 1953, 1955, 1995, 2012, 2018, and 2022 are sufficient to gauge the archaeological potential of the Elizabethan Gardens. The western portion of the gardens has proven to contain significant deposits of late woodland artifacts. It must be assumed that they derive from the nine-house Algonquian village of Roanoac, much of which has been lost to coastal erosion, as you had seen before. The experienced methods and advanced technologies of the First Colony Foundation archaeologists should be able to recover what remains of this first contact site, where Captain Amadas and Barlow were guests of Lady Grangno in the summer of 1584. The Roanoke Island Historical Association could ask for no more important historic site on this property. Already dedicated to commemorating Raleigh's colony, it would also commemorate the Algonquian people on the very site where they welcomed strangers into their home nearly 440 years ago. Thank you.